John Batiste, welcome to noise11.com. I have been thoroughly enjoying We Are. It's a magnificent piece of work. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I put my heart and soul into that.
Quite literally, the album is called We Are. Is it actually a reflection of who you are?
Yes, it's a reflection of who I am and who we are. It's the question and the answer all in one. We are, and I truly believe that music is one of those things that helps us to come together. It's a fabric for everyday life, and it's a glue in communities. In this album, in this time that we're in, oof, it's a special time for music to use that power.
Mm. As a musician, I guess your job is to entertain. As an activist, it's to educate and explain. In some ways, this album brings all of that together, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting you say that because before music was commodified and put into the buying and selling, put on T-shirts, CDs, and things like that, um, for many centuries, it was just in the community, in rituals, in worship, in different ways that people would pass wisdom on from the generation that they were in to the next generation. And there's so many uses of music that I think we've forgotten in modern times. And that's what my concept of social music is all about. Social music, which I believe this album is an example of social music, music that is going back to the original purposes of music, but in a 21st century modern context. So it blends all that education, life, lineage, heritage, fun, good old entertainment. When I go on the road and play these shows, it's going to be explosive. But then it's bigger than that. It's almost something that gives us a sense of identity and helps us to examine the history while also creating the future.
Mm. Being on such a high profile show as you are with Late Night with Stephen Colbert, that's brought to the musician a sense of celebrity. Does having the celebrity amplify your voice when you want to put that message out there?
Well, I think, looking at last summer, it really did. In fact, going back to the protest that I led for voter registration and all the different things that were going on with the uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement, I brought my band out there and, over 10,000 people showed up, and to lead a protest march that size garnered national attention all across the world. Actually, internationally, you would see the coverage of that. And I think that's one of the things that I can use my platform for in a way that another musician, they couldn't have that sort of eye on them. So I really do take it. I don't take it lightly. I take the responsibility very seriously to use the platform to do something that has the right kinds of impact.
Mm. I guess there's so much to get out there and talk about, isn't there? Because you've been involved with March for Science, Black Lives Matter, the sheer madness of the political reality show that the whole world has had to deal with for the last 4 years, and of course you've had COVID on top of that. I mean, how do you then divide your times as to the message that needs to be said the loudest on the day?
That's a spiritual thing for me. Everything comes internally, because if the external world is determining or distracting from your purpose, the thing that you're supposed to be speaking to in that moment that you can speak to best, then you'll be running around like a chicken with their head cut off, as the saying goes. But for me, I like to really do a lot of soul searching, the still small voice that's within all of us. For me, that's God. What is being said to me right now? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing that no one else but me could speak to? And I felt last summer, and many of the things that I've been involved in over time weren't overnight ideas. There have been things that have been developing within my spirit for many years. Even the march, we do these things called love riots, love and riot put together. It's love riot because you see the crowd and you think it may be a riot. They're chanting, but you get closer, they're chanting and dancing and singing next to each other. They don't even know each other. So it's a love riot. And we've created these in different parts of the world. Marches in this fashion when times were better. Just to give people a sense of love, joy, and community wherever we went. And I believe that time was in preparation for the time that we're in now, where the world needs love riots more than ever. So that's just an example of what, for me, is what I speak to, the thing that I know I've cultivated and built, and it was within my spirit for many years. So I know that I'm the best person to speak to it with authority.
Considering that spiritual journey that you've obviously been on, and then working on the movie Soul, how do you identify with that lead character, Joe Gardner, as both spiritual and a musician?
I mean, just think about what the pitch meeting for Soul was. We want to do a movie about a Black jazz musician who's middle-aged, who is going on this quest to discover what these existential questions really mean. What's the meaning of life? Where does the soul come from? Where does the soul go when we pass away? And jazz will be at the center of it, as well as electronic music blended together with jazz. So in that way that it's not on the beaten path and is not mainstream, and the music is something that he really thrives on. I relate to Joe in that way. And overall, I think the film is something that I really relate to because it really is an intersection of so many things that I'm all about. But I would even go as far to say that most people relate to Joe in having this thing or that thing that they've put a lot of value in, and they think that if they get this or get that opportunity or meet this person or have this experience, that everything in their life will be okay. And they realize that, maybe they see someone else get there or they get there themselves and it doesn't fix everything. And hopefully they'll find the realization that life is bigger than that thing that they may have put on a pedestal. And there's much more to life than that. So in that way, I think we all can relate to Joe in some way or another.
Yeah, even though it was a Disney movie, it was definitely not a kid's movie.
Yes, it was a movie for all ages in that kids could get into the animation and some of the themes, but then there are also these very heavy themes that when they watch the film 10 years from now, they'll catch it. Then they'll watch it 10 years from then, and then they'll catch even more. You could watch this film, if you're 5 years old, you could watch it for another 15, 20 years and still not get it all. And I love that about Pixar in general, but in particular, this film is very advanced in many ways while still being able to have kids around the world reach into it and get something of value out of it.
If I went back 20 years and talked to teenage Jon Batiste and said that one day you'll be working with the guy from Nine Inch Nails, what would you have said to me?
It's funny. I would have said, I wouldn't have been surprised, but I would have been, I mean, I don't want to say I wouldn't have been surprised because all of the things that have happened in my life, I couldn't have predicted. Again, I'm just walking the path, but I think that something like that would have been welcome to me. I remember you say 15, 20 years ago, I'm 33 now. So back at that time, I would have been using my allowance to buy CDs to build my CD collection. And at the time, I remember buying, not Nine Inch Nails CD, but I would buy CDs from every single section because they had it split into genres, and I would always buy CDs either based on having a variety of different genres or having a variety of different album covers. And I'd buy Led Zeppelin records, I would buy Korn records, I would buy Bjork records, stuff that people may not think I would listen to. I've downloaded, and when I say download, I mean physically, but also just listen to and internalized many artists' discographies that people don't even know that I would have in my catalog of my mental Rolodex. But saying that to say, I checked out some Nine Inch Nails much, much earlier than ever imagining to work with them. So I think I would have welcomed that at that time.
Would it have surprised you that the guy that wrote the song Closer to God all those years ago would end up working with you on a movie about being closer to God?
Well, that's a great thing. That's how life works. That's how God is. It just happens. We can't explain it.
Yes, and congratulations on your Golden Globe for that, and also the Oscar nod as well.
Oh man, this is fantastic. I think I'm thrilled, and my family is thrilled. We're all just very, very thrilled by all of this recognition.
When did you start to work on the We Are album, and how much involvement did you have with Kizzo and Autumn Rowe on the record?
Oh, great, great stories there. Wonderful stories. I started working on the album in September of 2019. And again, it was in my spirit to take a a lot of different styles of music and synthesize them with my story and with the story of many of the people who were meaningful to me in my journey, um, back way in 2014. But 2019 was when it crystallized in 6 days of recording sessions in my dressing room at the Ed Sullivan Theater. In my dressing room, which, just fun fact, used to be Carol Burnett's dressing room. And I had these sessions with Autumn and Kizzo, and at the end of these sessions, we had written about 10 songs, five of which that went on to make it on the album. So we literally had the blueprint for what the album would be after those 6 days. And then over 8 months, I took the music and wrote more music and collaborated with over 100 musicians, creatives, engineers, all these different creative voices to kind of build this record that is truly a synthesis of so many things, so many experiences, so many styles of music, and ultimately my heritage. And people have gotten so much joy from it already. It's truly amazing to see how much power this music has.
Your band is Stay Human. Now, you all got together when you were in your teens. That demonstrates a real loyalty and friendship, I would imagine, between the members of this band.
Oh yes, and in particular, I think about the drummer Joe Saylor. Joe Saylor, you can see him behind me on the Late Show when we were in the theater. He wears the cowboy hat, and call him the jazz cowboy. But Joe Saylor, much before he was the jazz cowboy, we met in high school. So if you can imagine meeting in high school, and also a bassist, Philip Keane, who was in the band for over 10 years. And that kind of being the nucleus of what Stay Human eventually became. We started playing together in high school and then moved to New York City together. They're not from New Orleans, but we all converged in New York. And we started playing eventually on the subways, and from the subways, playing just these love rides that I was explaining to you earlier, these kind of roving processionals with music, taking those all across the world, and then eventually all across television. The growth from high school classroom to subway to the world has been truly amazing.
And starting out on subways and also doing a record completely on a subway. That must have been interesting.
Yes, I studied at Juilliard. I did undergraduate and master's degrees there. And after I got off my second degree, I would go from the 66th Street Lincoln Center. If you've been to New York, you've seen the Metropolitan Opera and the Philharmonic. And Juilliard is this really amazing conservatory for music and dance and drama. And I would leave the conservatory and go right down to the dirty subway, and I'd be playing my harmonica board. And I would just want to bring that music and that culture and that experience to people who I imagine wouldn't have the opportunity to engage with it otherwise. And eventually, through that process of just playing real live concerts with my band Stay Human, I would play and people would get so enthralled with the music, they would follow us wherever we played around the city. And we built a really beautiful community, fan base of people there that expanded across different states and then eventually across the world. So that just goes to show, again, that was what social music is about. It created communities and connected people in ways, even within New York City, that unsuspecting subway riders didn't know was going to happen that day.
I guess Stay Human's just one of the groups, isn't it? Because the other group is the Family Group, which is quite the musical dynasty in New Orleans.
Oh yes, my family is very, very musical, and I have to say also on the We Are album, my father is playing bass on the album on some tracks, as well as on the title track. My grandfather is actually featured preaching on that track, along with my little vocal samples throughout the album of my nephews. And to have my family really represented on this album, both sides, both my musical side, which is the Batiste family, and my mother's side, the Gaucher family, and having both represented in that way, and releasing the album on the birthday of my late grandmother. Um, it's just a very powerful thing to connect my lineage to this project. And I think people who are hearing the record really hear that. They hear that depth and that authenticity.
When do you get back to work in the studio?
Oh wow, the studio is really happening at the timeline that the world comes back to happening. So we're all just waiting together. I think no one knows once we're gonna get this thing under control, but I believe it'll happen very soon. I'm very optimistic.
You should be in Australia. I was at a Midnight Oil concert on Saturday night with 15,000 others. So we're open up and back to business down here.
I've heard that you all did it the right way. we we had some challenges, I'll say.
Certainly. Hopefully the challenge has gone away and won't be rearing its head in 3 or 4 years from now.
Well, let's say that again.
John, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Again, love the album We Are, and thank you for joining us here at noise11.com.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.